Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pawan, and I'm the Programs and Peer Review Manager at SHRF. Welcome to the information webinar for the establishment grant. One small request. If you have any questions, I would request to please hold them until the end, and I'd be happy to answer all of them to the best of my ability. Before we move forward, I'm currently located in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which is a Treaty 6 territory. And I would like to acknowledge that I live, work, play, and raise a family on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of Métis. We pay our respect to the First Nation and Métis ancestors of this place and reaffirm our relationship with one another. For the next 45 minutes, I will talk a bit about what SHRF is. What is the establishment grant? What are the eligibilities for it? Who all can apply? How can we apply? How the applications are reviewed, some key takeaways, which sort of we collected over the years from the reviewers, like this is what they're looking for, something I find very important. And if you folks have any questions, obviously, we'll answer that. So who SHRF is? Saskatchewan Health Research Foundation, commonly known as SHRF. Here we fund, support, and promote the impact of health research that matters to the people of Saskatchewan. So we receive our funding from Government of Saskatchewan through Innovation Saskatchewan. And we meet our mandate through our strategic goals, which is to strengthen research capacity and competitiveness in the province, increase investment in research and innovation, and to make sure that aligns with the needs of the stakeholders and with the people of Saskatchewan. And we mostly do that through our three different programs. One is capacity, which is capacity building, which is establishment grant, which you're going to talk a lot about today. Then through solutions and through connections. Solution is basically to have innovative solutions for any health problems. And connections, like to have align and knowledge mobilization grants and some through our partnerships. But for today, we're going to focus specifically on the establishment grant. So establishment, basically, this grant assists our early career researchers to establish a nationally competitive program of health research in Saskatchewan. It provides up to $150K over the period of 3 years. And this is one of our longest standing grant. We've been supporting early career researchers since 2003. So basic question comes like, who all can apply? So principal applicant who hold qualifying appointments in Saskatchewan at a rank of an assistant professor or equivalent. Like I know like some colleges does not have a rank of assistant professor, they have something equivalent. So as long as it's there, with the expectations and with the exception and opportunity to undertake research. And the applicant, the PI who is applying, must be within the first 5 years of their initial research-related appointment as of June 1 of this year. And we do understand that it can be different for some individuals. Some individuals might be having a transition from, let's say, a clinician might be moving into research, or somebody have a career break in between. So for those things can be assessed on case by case basis, not like black and white. Okay, you started in 2015, it's 2025. No, you're not eligible. So if something is not clear, we usually see those cases. We assess them case by case as it comes to us. So let's talk a bit more about eligibility, like who all can apply and how should the team should look like. So for the principal applicant, there are some basic requirements. So the principal applicant must be a self-directed and autonomous, regarding the research activities. That is, they are not a trainee or a contracted employee, like a postdoc cannot apply for this grant. or a research assistant, like you should have a position with one of the Saskatchewan institutions with which we have a memorandum of understanding. And I will come to those institutions in a while. Principal applicant must be able to hold peer review funds as a principal investigator and publish the research results. And more importantly, like work in Saskatchewan during the funding period of this grant. So like if you're proposing a research, that research has to be based in Saskatchewan. And another important thing, if you already got this thing once, you cannot apply it again. So if you already have an establishment grant, yeah, like you can't apply it again. So these are the institutions with which we have our MOUs signed with. So if you are from one of these institutions, you are eligible to apply for the establishment grant, considering you meet the other requirements. So a lot of time people ask and about like how should the team looks like, what should be their roles on this application. So considering this is something to support an early career researcher, so there is technically no minimum team requirements. You can apply all by yourself, but the collaborations always strengthen the application. And in my humble opinion, I will suggest individuals to have like a strong collaboration, like somebody a mid-career researcher and like and a late-career researcher. Just for this specific program, there cannot be a co-principal applicant. You can have co-applicants, but you cannot have a co-principal applicant for this call. And the team sort of comes like all the people can participate in this project in three different roles. One can be an applicant. Applicant is somebody who is contributing to the intellectual, cultural, or scientific directions of the project. And those individuals can be a researcher, those individuals can be a knowledge user, or somebody with a lived experience. And then you can have personals who you can sort of recruit to do the certain aspects of the research project, such as your trainees, your research staff. And the personals are somebody who can get compensated from the grant, like you can pay them. And then you can have supporters like either individuals or the organizations who provide a limited and a defined role in the project or may have an interest in the proposed outcomes. Let's say you're doing something with cancer and the cancer agency wants to be a supporter on the project, so they can provide a letter of support and that strengthen the projects like in terms of who's supporting the project. Another thing that also comes out like how do we choose who is a researcher, who's a knowledge user, who is a person with lived experience and all those things. And that is truly with the PI, how the PI decides. The PI and the individual can talk and they can decide that person can be a researcher or that person can be a knowledge user or somebody with a lived experience. They will come with their lived experience on the projects. Co-applicants cannot be paid from the grant. So if you're a co-applicant, you cannot get paid with the exception of the knowledge users time release and somebody with a lived experience who is providing their expertise. In that sense, they can get an honorarium. So if you look at the establishment guideline, there's one thing that comes up prior to the complete application is eligibility check process. And sometimes it get asked, why do we need to do an eligibility check? I would say there are two big reasons. One, we don't want somebody to put an application together, spend about 2 to 3 months, and then it's not eligible. So we want to make sure the principal applicant is eligible for this round. So that's one reason. And the second is it helped us facilitate the creation of a review committee with expertise for the proposed project. Once we know who's applying, so in that time period, you folks are putting your application together, we try to get a diverse team of reviewers across Canada, and we try to match them as closely as to your research. So that's one of the reasons that we do need eligibility check. So now what's the process for that? Like, so basically through our RMS system, and I see some of the folks are already working on it as we are speaking. So we basically get some information about the principal applicant, their position in their institution, their start dates, a bit of a project overview, and how it's a fit with the program. You can also add co-applicants at this stage, but their contribution forms are not needed to be complete until the full application. So this is reviewed internally by SHRF's program manager, and it has a rolling intake. I just want to emphasize one more thing here. Considering this is a rolling intake, I would strongly suggest everyone to do this as soon as possible. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, somebody finished this thing on January 2nd. We take a look at it. Hopefully, January 3rd, it's get approved. And then you have an extra 2 weeks to start working on your proposal. And or there can be another case where you submit something on January 2nd. We need some more information from you. We can request that. You can bring that information in the time frame, and application goes through. Let's say if you wait till the last day, that is January 23rd, I have some questions. We ask you, can you provide this documentation or something? And you're not, and let's say it takes longer time to provide that documentation. It may delay things on your end also. So I would strongly request, like, to if your schedule allows and everything, please submit the eligibility check as soon as possible. Sooner you get it, more time you have to work on your full application. So how do we apply? So we use our research management system, which is commonly called as RMS. Once you folks log in into the system, you will see everything set up for you, and it's sort of very easy to follow around. But again, if you have any questions, you can contact me or Tanya, and her information is at the end of the presentation too. And we will do our best to assist you and help you move forward with the application process. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of like the big documents that you need for this. Definitely a research proposal, which is about 10 pages. Please make sure you're following the formatting guidelines. A section about sex and gender considerations. If your project does have sex and gender considerations, please say how it it do so. If it does not, please also tell us why it does not. Reviewers like to see that thing. Timeline, 1 page. Please have it as smooth as possible so they have an easy understanding of like how the project flows out. A dean or a department head letter of support. I will talk about it more in my next slide. And then the basic thing, the references, the make sure the budget is there. And we also have a section for justifying your budget. Contribution forms, very, very important. A lot of times what happen is everybody have their proposal ready, everything ready, and on the last day, they are not able to get the contribution form filled by the team members. So that delays things a lot. So if you have a big team or a small team, or if you know who are on the team, see if you can get the contribution form sooner than later. How's your research going to impact? That's one thing. And then research office signature, that's, I think, very basic things. You folks know everything about that, I'm pretty sure. So I want to now focus on a couple of things which are important during the application process. One is your dean or a department head letter of support. And all of this information is in detail in the establishment guide and in our funding guides. All of these things you can find like in more detail about there. So the dean letter of support makes sure it talks about the research environment, including what kind of support as a PI you will have from the department, a confirmation of sufficient protected research time to complete the proposed activity in the given time frame. A lot of time a question comes out like, so what do you mean by sufficient protective time? So we do not have any minimum protective research time, but it has to be feasible with what you are proposing. So let's say you're proposing that I'm gonna put like 3 hours a week into this project, and but looking at your dean letter of support, it says your 95% of your time goes towards, let's say, teaching or administration or clinical things. So sometimes the reviewer might feel like, how will that be feasible that this person's gonna oversee the project? So make sure that confirmation of protective research time is clear in that letter. the nature and extent of your non-research activities, as I mentioned, like if you're teaching, if you're doing administrative work, if you're a clinician, if you're doing clinical work, like how much time you still have left after this to do the certain research, your start date confirmation, and information regarding a term position or the process to a permanent position. So what I mean by that, sometimes individual have like a term position, but the department says if this individual gets the grant, we will grant him a permanent position. So something to tell us that you're gonna have a position for the 3 years of this time if you get the project. So that's like something important about the dean or department head letter of support. Then another question that comes very often is what is the allowable expenses? Although it's explained pretty well in the funding guide, but there are some common themes that comes up over the year and just want to talk a bit about it. So you can buy equipment, but consider the availability of equipment and its benefit to the principal applicant for the long term in their research program. Any expenses that necessary to carry out your proposed activity which are not provided through other means. So you can put those in there. Please make sure that the cost of academic knowledge translation is limited to 10%. However, there is no cap on non-academic knowledge mobilization that you can put whatever amount you see feasible on there. And other thing, like all expenses must be clearly justified in relation to the proposed project activities and should only cover the direct cost for the project. And keep in mind that SHRF is a publicly funded agency, so please be responsible in terms of how you are putting your expenses out. Let's say you are doing a certain research and you need, let's say, motion capture. Does anybody else in the department have that? And if you can use that, that'd be nice. So you don't have to spend that budget on that equipment. Instead, you can spend on something else. But something like I'm sure you folks know way better than me. So please have those things as clear as possible. Um, okay. Yeah. Some other budget considerations. Costs explicitly associated with preparing future grants are not an allowable expense. If you put that, we have to take that off. So please don't put that in there. And if you have any other in-kind or other sources of funding which are required to complete the proposed research, should be included in the budget and the justification. Sometimes I have seen in the past in the review committee meetings that somebody's proposing the project will take about 300K, for example, and sometimes they do not explain that they already have 150K or 200K secured through some other means, and they did not mention it. So sometimes for the reviewers, it's like, how will they gonna complete this research if they do not have that money? So if you have any other support for this project, please put that in the budget section also with the justification that you do have those things. It strengthens the project, the research proposal. Now, other big thing that comes up about the contribution forms, which I mentioned earlier, that a lot of time they get left behind, and people are always like at the last time, oh, we are like this has not it has not been completed, and folks are and at the end of the day it's like they have to scramble to get things together. So all the people on the project, whether it's an applicant, a personnel, or a supporter who are on the application, they must create an RMS account and complete and submit a contribution form. For the applicant, it looks like for the applicant, if you are, let's say, a researcher, do you have a researcher CV template on SHRF's website? You are a knowledge user, you have a knowledge user CV template. If you're somebody with a lived experience, they can provide a testimony. It can be an audio, it can be a video, they can write a letter, whatever they want to write. For personal, we don't have a specific documents, but they have to answer some questions like how many hours they work on the project, how will they support the project, like very basic things. When you go into the RMS, you will see that. And for supporters, they can provide a letter of support. As I mentioned earlier, let's say you're working with cancer agency, and they can provide a letter of support that, oh, we support this project, or we will, or there's a clinician working with you, and they can provide like, will help the recruitment or something. So whoever is provide doing that role of a supporter, they provide a letter of support. So yeah, everybody have to go to RMS. Everybody have to sign in. And the good thing that we change actually for just our last call for solutions, that the PI have a control over all the contributions form. So let's say you have somebody with a lived experience, or a personal, or even or like a knowledge user who doesn't have the capacity to go into the system and write all those things. They can accept the invitation, and PI, with their consent, can fill out information on their behalf. So that sort of smooth things out. You don't have to wait for the individual to do the task. As long as they accept the invitation and you have their consents and you both agree, and then you can, as a PI, you can complete those contribution forms. Makes life slightly easier. Um, so as I said, like for the researchers and for the knowledge users, we have CV profile templates. And this pretty much gives you the freedom to decide how you highlight your expertise and skills in the research area while maintaining a general structure for the peer reviewers. So as I mentioned, like researcher have their own CV template, knowledge user have their own CV template. So please download those and fill those and upload those when you're doing it. Uh, Now the next thing, how our applications get reviewed. So all applications that comes to SHRF go to the SHRF research funding competitions, are educated according to the principles of the peer review. And for more details, like please look at SHRF peer review guidelines. You will find each and everything there. Just to give you a synopsis of like, so basically, the applicant need a minimum score of 3.5 on a 5-point scale, which is required all on all criteria, which I'll be talking in the next slide, to be considered for funding. So we basically recruit multidisciplinary committees across Canada. So for each application, we have two reviewers. One is a primary reviewer and one is a secondary reviewer. They discuss, they give the scores, and then the whole committee brings in their thoughts and they give the scores. And then we also recruit two external reviewers for each applications. So, and so like there's a pretty good sort of review process that goes for with these applications. All the review committee meetings are in person in Saskatchewan, and the funding is allocated from top down in each of the funding envelopes. So if you are in a social or if you're in a biomedical, let's say you're a 4.2, then the 4.2 gets funding one, then the 4.1, and so on until the we exhaust the envelope or we reaches 3.5. So that's how this peer review process works out. So for the review criteria, I would also again request like to take a look at the establishment package to get more information about it. But on a bigger end, like applicant potential is weighted about 30%, where we look at collaborations instead. That's PI's progress in building other academic and non-academic collaborations in terms of their career, the evidence of PI's commitment to the research or the topic area, productivity in terms of academic and non-academic knowledge translations that happened over the over the past few years or so, any other peer review fundings. And in terms of leadership is like sort of evidence of leadership capabilities, including mentorship for the trainees or for the trainees and everybody else. The quality of proposal weighs sort of the most as about 50%, which look at the rationale and the originality, that is identifying gaps in the existing knowledge or need for the research. Methods, like how clear the methods are, how appropriate those are, has the ethical considerations has been thought about, what about EDI, what about TCPS chapter 9, and all those things. Feasibility is a pretty big where I've seen reviewers discuss a lot. Like, is there's a logical timeline to the proposal? Is there appropriate research environment, including access to like the necessary space and tools, whatever is been needed to complete the project? And most importantly, I would say potential challenges and have been addressed. That also got discussed a lot in the review meeting. And obviously, at the end, the budget, like a clear and a reasonable justification for whatever the applicant is asking. And the other most important thing is potential impact of proposed research. Like, what are the plans for the knowledge mobilization, though it be academic or non-academic? The contribution of research, like potential to advance in that field and the state of knowledge. Is there a potential to inform health practices and policies if applicable? Another big thing is considering we are Saskatchewan based, like what's the relevance to Saskatchewan, like the potential impact on the health of Saskatchewan residents, either directly or indirectly, like how does it impact that and the impacts of the research. Having said so, I think this for me, like I know you folks are way smarter and like you will read everything, but this for me is one of the biggest slides. Um, please read the application package and the funding guidelines clearly. Again, you have any questions, anything, please contact us. A lot of time we have seen that folks make small things in the proposal, which cost them very heavily, although the proposal were very well written, but they miss some key things. Background, a lot of times folks spend a lot of time on background and did not have uh, a great rationale. I would, again, this is just like a, sort of a suggestion from my end is like spend time on background, but make the background crisp, rational, like a great rationale, and detail the how. What are the methods? Um, and like sometimes what happens is like folks look at this opportunity as like a one-time project and then okay, oh, there's an opportunity to get this grant money, we'll do one-time project and then like what are the future aspects with that project. So look at the program's objective with the clear future vision. So we are hoping that this will help you establish you as an early career researcher within Saskatchewan and across Canada. And this project, like this money hopefully will be a starting money and then you can take this project further. So please explain that. That's pretty important. Other important thing I would say is team roles. Other thing that comes up a lot in the review meetings when people have a really big team and when the reviewers look at their contribution forms, they find that okay, they had 10 people in on the team and out of 10, 6 contribution forms they say is very like basic thing that sort of says is this person really contributing to the proposal or to the proposed research. So if you have somebody on the on the team, please make sure their roles are well defined and it suits to your proposal. Make it easy to read. As I said, like we try to recruit an interdisciplinary committee across Canada, and we try our best to fit it as close to your research area. But sometimes there may be somebody who is not as familiar with your research is also reviewing your grant. So make it as easy as possible for it to read. Take a look at formatting, check your maths. A lot of time what happens is the budget does not adds up. And so please take a look at it. Test your application with your friend, family. Trust me, sometimes like non-academic folks give such a great feedback. I can't understand this thing. What is this? Why is this? See if those question comes up and if you can address those. And yes, and last thing is please check the contribution forms if they have been submitted prior to deadline, as I mentioned like twice, I think. a lot of time they did not get submitted, and then either you have to take that person off the team, or we talk if that happens. I hope that doesn't happen this time. Um, some important dates to remember. So the competition has already been launched. I have seen already, like, I think 7, 8 applications working on the eligibility check, 23rd of Jan. As I suggested earlier, do it as soon as possible. There's not a lot of work in there. If your schedule allows, do it sooner than later. So if there are anything that we need to chat about, we can do it way prior to that January 30th deadline, and you will have more time to work on the complete application. The deadline is March 13th, and the funding results comes out on June 19th. And you can choose your start date if you're awarded the this grant, either July 1st to July to October 1st, uh, first of the end of the month. Some other resources to check out. Especially, I would highly suggest checking the funding guide and the RMS manuals. Like, there are some really good resources, and the YouTube videos are really, really fantastic. Thank you so much for listening to me. And Tanya, as I mentioned, she is our RMS expert. And any questions if you folks had about RMS or something, she can help you folks. Um, uh, with that, thank you so much. I will stop sharing my video. I will turn my camera on, and if you folks have any questions, either you can unmute yourself and or you can type it in the chat, whatever works best for you. Thank you so much. Yes, the co-applicants can be from outside of Saskatchewan. Yes. Thank you. And we're gonna record, like, this thing is recorded already, and we're gonna be posting this on the YouTube channel, and we'll send a video we'll send a link to that too. And I will also share the PowerPoint also in case somebody needs it. Uh, okay. The first question is about the success rate. I would say it's very hard to, let me do my maths. I think it's close to, I would say, um, it changes every time considering how many applications we get, and I would say it's close to 20 to 25% in that area, but again, it depends upon the number of applications we receive. I hope that answers your question. But yeah, as Chelsea said, like, sometimes it can be 30 to 40%. Yes, that has happened also in the past. Thanks, Chelsea. Another one, I have a question about the supporters. Could other funding agency be supporters? Does financial support count? So they can go into your in-kind or the other supports that you have that can go into your budget, and you can put it there, like, this is what I have in in-kind or from other agencies to support the project, and they can go on your budget table. Yes. That's a good question. What are the guidelines about the conceptual overlap with the other grants? I think I'm not sure. Maybe Chelsea might be able to answer that. I think we do have a section in our application where we ask you about the proposed overlap, whether it's conceptual or financial. Chelsea, is there something else you'd like to add into that?
Just that, yeah. Potential overlap has a section. You can check scientific or budget overlap or both, depending, just to make sure everything's clear.
Thank you so much, Chelsea.
Can I just ask a question over
Yes.
the mic to avoid typing? I was just wondering, are the funds released like yearly? So like for budgeting, like do you know, would you need to kind of budget per year because funds will only be released, you know, a part of the funds per, you know, year 1, year 2, year 3, or would it all be released at the start of the grant?
Great question, Tamara. So basically, however you put your budget in, you can use all 150K in 1 year, in 2
Okay.
years, in 3 years, depending on how you propose and how the reviewers looks at it. So you can, if you want to use all 150K in 1 year, ideally you can use that too.
Okay, thanks.
Chelsea, you want to add anything into that?
Yeah, I'll just add our agreement with the universities is that they guarantee the funding for us. So we release funds monthly within whatever you budgeted for that year amount, but the U of S basically guarantees it per year. But then year to year, that depends on the approval of our ongoing budget from our funder. So usually you try to stick within the year amount as much as possible, but if the funds aren't in your account yet for the year, you can still go within that year amount.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, I was muted. I'm bad. My bad. Yes, you still be needing a support letter if if somebody's providing. But if you already have funds, I don't think you'll be needing a support letter as long as you put it in the budget thing. Like this is what you already have from the in-kind support from other resources, and it's confirmed. So we believe you that it's confirmed. I'm just looking at Jake's question. So I had a colleague and it says that they thought that the SHRF subscription grant allowed budget items for covering a portion salaries for physicians PI, so they can take time away from the clinical practice. This it seems costly, and I don't see anything about that in the funding. Can you please clarify on that? Okay. I think they will come under the knowledge user section, and they can have a time release. I think again it depends how you put that in the application, like what portion of your grant goes towards them. Jake, I hope that answers that questions, but like if you want to add something, you can. Samara has a question: would Skipper support additional applications for the no, unfortunately, Skipper is not a partner this year on the establishment, so there won't be any Skipper support, additional Skipper support for this year. Then there's a question about is there a is there a report yearly about how the funds were used compared to the initial grant? Yes, you will the successful applicant will be providing an yearly report of like where the project has gone so far and what have been used so far. Yes. I don't think the applicant can use this towards their salary. I may be incorrect. I have to check. Chelsea, is there anything you want to add on Jake's question?
So this is about the potential time release for clinicians.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, definitely like principal applicant would not be eligible for that knowledge user time release since they are applying as someone who is expected to do research. And then any co-applicants, it'd be a very similar rule. Time release, they should have a position that's not expecting them to participate in research. So for someone like a nurse or a social worker, that's a little bit easier of a case. Someone like a physician is more of a gray area since a lot of physicians are also expected to do, well, not expected, but supported to do some research.
Thanks, Chelsea. I hope that answers JK question, but is if there are not any other questions, thank you so much. And we look forward to your applications. And in the meanwhile, if you folks have any questions or any concerns about the RMS or anything, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to assist as, um, as much as we can. And if you're doing your eligibilities, again, one last thing before I go off, do it sooner than later. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.